All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Spotlight on Connecticut's Next Generation of Civic Leaders. I'm Jason Pittner, and I'm the School Programs Coordinator at the Connecticut Democracy Center in residence at Connecticut's Old State House. The Connecticut Democracy Center provides people with a lifetime pathway to active citizenship and the tools to take civic action in their own communities. You can learn more about our programs at ctdemocracycenter.org. I'm presenting this from Connecticut's Old State House in Hartford, Connecticut, which served as a seat of state government for 82 years, so from 1796 to 1878. The Connecticut Democracy Center is the state affiliate of Civics Now, a national cross-partisan coalition that leads Civic Learning Week, which happens to be this week. Civic Learning Week is a national effort to prioritize civic education in order to sustain and strengthen our constitutional democracy. Today's program is one of the many that we have offered throughout the course of this week, and you explore those programs and resources from our civics partners on the Civic Learning Week in Connecticut page on our website. With that said, I want to thank you all for tuning in to hear from Antonia Cambelis, Brian Engels, Isaiah Ringfield, and Idan Bosley to learn more about their work and Connecticut's next generation of civic leaders. This conversation will provide insight into how students across Connecticut are leading some of the state's most pivotal civic engagement initiatives and demonstrating their leadership potential. I will start with asking each panelist questions individually, then I will ask them questions as a group. We will conclude with an audience-based Q&A, so we invite you to leave questions in the chat throughout the program, and we'll get to them at the end. All right, so our first interviewer for the one-on-one questions is going to be Antonia. Antonia Cambelis is a senior at Trinity College, double majoring in political science and human rights studies. She began working with the lab on civic and democratic participation under Professor Nat Dang Do in 2024, and has been researching voter mobilization on the Hartford Voter Captains Project ever since. Now, as the lead student researcher, she is excited to present this project at the New England Political Science Association Conference in Burlington, Vermont in April, and continue her passion for civic engagement, community-based research, and grassroots advocacy beyond her studies. Hi, Antonia, how are you doing?
I'm great, Jason. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm really excited to be talking with you. So let's start with what do civics and civic engagement mean to you?
So the way I think about it is civics is the information that you have about what's going on around you, like right in your community. And civic engagement is what you do with that information. So to me, that's being a good neighbor, engaging in your community in any way that you see fit, advocating for what you want and what your community needs.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, what was your initial introduction to civics?
So when I was in high school, there was a program that my history department offered where you could take history and social studies electives that were geared more towards civics. And I think I joined that program because they had a field trip to the Philadelphia Art Museum, but they ended up being my favorite classes that I took in high school and the ones that I remember the most. And I think it kind of took off from there for me, and I have just been interested in it ever since.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great opportunity. Outside of that, have you found it to be challenging to find civic engagement opportunities?
I think in Hartford, I'm really lucky to go to school in a city that is so civically involved. I've never met a population of people that care more about their city. If you ever have the chance to go to a Hartford NRZ meeting, I really recommend it highly. So here I really don't find it that challenging. I think when I first got to campus, it was a little bit difficult because I just didn't know where to look. But once I got to know the city more, I think it became a lot easier. And I just kind of, once I started engaging in the community, it just became a lot easier.
Yeah, I get it. It's such a natural thing to go with after you start. And I totally agree with you in terms of, participating in NRZ meetings. They truly are so great. What we're really interested in hearing from you about is your role with voter captains. Mm-hmm. So can you briefly talk about voter captains and tell us about why you wanted to be a part of it and become a student leader with it?
Yeah, so the Hartford Voter Captains Project is the initiative that I lead through the Lab on Civic and Democratic Participation. And so it is a research design where we are looking at how to mobilize voters, marginalized voters in cities. We use Hartford as a case study, but hopefully one day we can replicate that in other cities. But specifically, we look at Hartford, and we kind of have this assumption, or our hypothesis really is that you are more likely to vote based on how people talk to you and in your community. So we have our voter captains, which are people that live in Hartford. They are Hartford community members. They sign up to be voter captains. And we have these training sessions where we talk about voting and how to talk to your community about voting in a way that is resonant to you culturally and your experiences and what you want to see happen civically. And so really the goal is not just to get voters for or get votes for a specific election or any given election cycle. It is more so to create, to sustain civic engagement long term. It's a long term study, so we are looking at civic engagement as sort of a metric that we can measure across years and different election cycles. So yeah, I can kind of expand on what civically engaged research means if people have questions about that, but that is what we are doing. And I became interested in doing it. I signed on to do research with Professor Doe, who leads this initiative and leads the lab on civic and democratic the lab on civic and democratic participation. I started doing that my sophomore year, and he told me about this project particularly, and I just was really inspired by it. The first time I ever went to a voter captain's meeting, I just was really inspired by the community. And yeah, I just have been really lucky to be able to do this, especially undergrad. It's just been really great. So yeah, that was.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a super unique, like one of a kind opportunity. And from the experience I've had with voter captains and from what I've heard about it, it does really seem like a great program. And if I'm not mistaken, it's not, although it operates out of Trinity College, it's for more than just college students, right? Like anyone can participate in being a voter captain.
So yeah, that's the kind of beauty of it. So because it is a community-based research model, our participants aren't students generally. Our most active participants are actually like middle-aged to older women. And so they tend to be our most like civically engaged participants, which is really cool. But our research assistants are students, but our participants are not generally.
Yeah, awesome. And then I know you said you've been working kind of alongside Professor Doe since, you said 2024?
Yes.
Yeah, so throughout your time doing research with him, but then also being a part of the Voter Captains Project specifically, do you have like a certain highlight or a certain like really fond memory in terms of working on this?
So I think maybe when we had our first voter captains training session this year, for the when we first launched the Voter Captains Project, we did it for the presidential election in 2024. This year we were looking at a low saliency election, the school board election in Hartford, and that was the first training session. It was really cool to see the returning voter captains come back, and they were so excited. And it was really great to meet all of the new people that wanted to be a part of it. So I would say that was probably my favorite memory, getting to kind of be one of the leaders and talk through the training session with the participants. It was really cool, and it was really great.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to think not only is an opportunity to engage in your community, but also fosters a sense of community, which is like really unique. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Antonia. We'll come back to you in just a little bit, but we're now going to move on to Ryan Engels. Ryan Engels is a student at the University of Connecticut studying political science, geography, and public policy. Stemming from his service as a land use commissioner in Westbrook, Ryan founded the Connecticut Youth Political Advocacy Center with the primary goal of engaging young people in state and local government. The organization has now grown to over 100 members from all 8 of Connecticut counties, and and launched highly impactful initiatives such as an internship database, mentorship program, voter booklets, an endorsement program, and much more. How are you, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Appreciate it.
So, same questions I asked Antonia. What do civics and civic engagement mean to you?
Yeah, of course. So I think civics and civic engagement really means understanding, but also actively participating in your community. When people hear civics, they may think of politics, but I think it's kind of important to separate the two. Civics can be serving on a nonprofit board, volunteering at a local soup kitchen, or even, coaching youth sports. It's not necessarily running for office or engaging in partisan politics, which I think people assume and I think can sometimes push people away from civics.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to make the distinguish between, civics and politics. I think though they do can overlap at times, they are very much like their own entities in a lot of ways. What was kind of your first introduction to civics?
My first introduction to civics was actually through an internship at a local law firm. I was going to different land use commission meetings and taking notes for the attorney, and I just found it all super interesting. After the internship concluded, I started looking for all these opportunities in my own town. And as I learned more about land use, I saw that the commissioners in my town were sometimes 2 to 3 times my age while making these decisions about the environment and housing affordability. And I knew these issues were important to people my age and that we required a voice at the table. So I ran for office, and then from there, my interest has kind of snowballed into civic engagement as I try to urge other young people to get involved in these spaces.
Yeah, well, sometimes all it takes is a leader like yourself to really kind of start a following base and really kind of get people on board. So I think it's great that you really took a hold of that opportunity. Outside of such a great opportunity, have you found it challenging to find civic engagement opportunities?
Yeah, I did. When I first got involved in local government, I kind of searched for other areas that kind of catered to that specific niche of Connecticut state and local government, and I didn't find it. So I saw that gap in civic engagement opportunities, and that was kind of the inspiration behind starting SciPac.
Yeah, awesome. And then speaking of SciPac, can you briefly tell us a little bit more about it, as long as your reason for wanting to found it?
Yeah, of course. So I was appointed to my town's Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission when I was 18 years old. Being the youngest commissioner in town history, I noticed that not many other young people were doing the same work as me. I also noticed that many young people typically gravitated towards national politics, which were more polarizing. That the biggest impact the young people could make was in their own communities. So SciPac was created to encourage young people to engage in state and local politics rather than turning to national politics, which can be a little bit more polarizing and can kind of discourage participation.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think a lot of times people tend to overlook local politics. They tend to kind of glance over the importance of it, especially I think people don't realize they're the ones making the everyday decisions in your town. So I think it's really important that you're kind of bringing attention to that and getting a lot of eyes on that. So I applaud you for that. It sounds like a fantastic thing you've kind of built from the ground up, and I'm sure there's been a lot of highs. But is there one that sticks out throughout this period?
Yeah, definitely. So seeing all these initiatives has just turned out to be pretty successful, has kind of been my highlight. My favorite example was our mentorship program. Back in 2024, we had a high schooler who was interested in pursuing a legal career. And her hero was Attorney General William Tong, since they both shared a similar background. So her mentor in the program, who was a local town party chair at the time, was able to set up a lunch with her and the Attorney General. And it was really rewarding just to see an initiative like that we set up to really make a dream come true.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's just one thing of many. Mm-hmm. So that's really exciting. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Like I said, hello to Antonia. We'll come back to you in just a little bit. We're going to move on to Isaiah Ringfield. Isaiah Ringfield is a first year at Yale University, majoring in political science and Black studies. Originally from San Diego, California, his civic engagement advocacy work was inspired by an op-ed piece he wrote in the local paper urging peers to become more civically engaged. Thousands of youth registered to vote later. He now serves as the voter advocacy coordinator for the Yale College Democrats, its nonpartisan civic engagement education branch. Isaiah, how are you doing?
Hi, Jason. How are you? I'm good.
I'm good. Thank you for joining us tonight. Isaiah, can you hear me?
Sorry, what did you say?
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So let's dive in with the first question. What do civics and civic engagement mean to you?
Yeah, I love what Ryan said. I'm in talking about civics being more than just politics. Typically, I think that civics is really, it's rooted from the word government, and that means government in all ways, and in the way that we govern and processes with nonpartisan organizations that are doing work like the Connecticut Democracy Center, or in your city council, or in your school board, or in your local commissions. I think that's just civics. I think civic engagement is caring about these issues because they affect you, and like a lot of my fellow panelists have already said, is taking that and showing up to a council meeting if there's an issue that is pertinent to you, or showing up to a school board meeting and having a conversation about your students' success or your experience with the school district. I think civic engagement comes in a lot of ways, especially today, in digital ways, sending emails to representatives or sending emails to civic organizations, or making a phone call. But I think engagement is engaging in all ways. And like my colleagues have said, like on all levels, local, state, and federal. So,
Yeah, I think just to kind of build off what you said, I think when it comes to getting people your age, my age, engaged in civics, a lot of times it takes that personal connection.
Mhm.
Once they find that connection, it's so much easier to, want to have a seat at the table or want to get involved. And then as a result, people are able to build all types of community amongst each other, which is just always great.
Mhm.
Do you have a certain introduction to civics that you remember?
Yeah. So similar to what you said in my description, I've always been interested in like political antics. Like in middle school, I'd always watch the State of the Unions, and joke about it or talk about it with my parents and family. But I never.
Isaiah, you still with us? There we go. I can hear you now.
So, I was never actually able to.
Here, wait, Isaiah, you're cutting out just a little bit.
Sorry. Is it good?
It's just a little staticky.
Ah. Um. All right. Let me go outside. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, it's getting better. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I always cared about these issues in terms of online and TikTok and having conversations. But I never really used that to actually engage. And what became really, really important to me when I wrote an op-ed piece in our local paper was researching gerrymandering was one, and how gerrymandering impacted racial groups in the South, from North Carolina to Alabama. And then number two is urge a lot of youth in the San Diego area to get involved. And at the time, I was a student board member, and my fellow board member, she came up to me and she said, let's do something about this. She said, let's use your paper to guide a voter registration and voter education blitz to November 2024. So we were able to visit every single high school and every single junior and senior social class in South San Diego and register over 2,000 students and staff to vote. And that was kind of my introduction into this work. And I think something that was apparent that I became passionate about was, yeah, passionate about the issues that I care about, but also passionate about every single person, every single San Diegan, every single person in Connecticut, every single student at Yale, every single person in this country has the opportunity to have their voice heard, no matter what side of the spectrum that they're on. Because oftentimes what I've learned in talking with juniors or talking with adults in the League of Women Voters or in the Democracy Center is that oftentimes what shapes us in the ways that we civically engage is our background. Because we've been through this, because we've seen this, because we know this matters to us and our neighbors. And that's why we're involved. That's why we're involved in a certain issue. That's why we care about this certain issue. And I've learned that's become my overarching passion of making sure that every single person, no matter from where, has the opportunity to engage civically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that seems like it was a great opportunity. I think just to build again off of what you're saying, I think a lot of times civics can kind of be seen as like a shared vision. There's always something that everyone wants, and I think that's always something that people can relate to. There's always a certain issue that one is particularly attracted to, or one that wants, something a person wants to see a difference in. But I mean, outside of that opportunity, and it seems like a great one, and it seems like you had a great mentor who kind of guided you through that opportunity.
Yeah.
Have you found it challenging outside of that, and outside of finding the Yale College Democrats, to find other civic engagement opportunities?
Absolutely. I think with Yale College Dems, everyone in our group are eager to add more people from everywhere and get involved. So that wasn't so hard in terms of getting involved on campus at Yale. But I think in general, what I oftentimes find is like political campaigns. Of course, they want you to go out and register some people to vote, right? Contingent based off if they vote for you. Of course, these propositions and measures happening in California or Connecticut, of course, their organizers want you to register to vote or want you to be civically engaged so that you can say yes in the proposition. But it's hard, to be an organizer and do this kind of work where you serve as, I've always said, as a bridge between this polarized country and polarized universities and polarized communities that we find ourselves living in lately. And yeah, I mean, it is difficult to do this type of work, and without peers like the board member that I had, or without organizations like the Connecticut Democracy Center, or without support, some sort of support, that's oftentimes smaller. These organizations are oftentimes smaller when they do nonpartisan type of work. It's difficult, especially when you're young, right, and you're trying to do this work at the age that we're in. It's funny, like trying to convince other students to register to vote, and you're not 18 yet. You're pre-registered to vote. You're not fully registered to vote. It's difficult, but I think it's very rewarding work. But I think it's difficult. But so are so many other facets in terms of civics and engaging. It's difficult, but we don't do it because it's easy. So
Yeah, I think even how you're mentioning how it's really important to have that support and to have those leaders. You may not think it or realize it, but you're one of them as well. I mean, especially within Yale College Democrats, and I'm really interested, and I'm sure everyone else is, in terms of learning more about Yale College Democrats and your role within Yale College Democrats. Could you tell us a little more about that, as well as like your reason for wanting to become a part of that?
yeah. I am the voter advocacy coordinator for the Yale College Democrats, which means that I lead our voter advocacy branch. Our voter advocacy branch tends to be more nonpartisan, and we typically do work from writing postcards to voters in Maine, letting them know that there's a special election coming up, to visiting New Haven public schools, and working with their leadership in New Haven Public Schools and visiting classes and giving out voter education seminars, and pre-registering a lot of those students to vote, to on Yale campus through tabling, through partnering with other organizations like Yale Undergraduate Legal Aid. We have the Yale Democracy Project, organizations, other civic organizations, departments within Yale. That's the type of work that we do at our branch, and then the broader group of Democrats. I think the core reason for why I'm involved with College Dems is because I think oftentimes in university spheres, or in other institutionalized spheres, oftentimes you get a bunch of debate groups and speech groups and mock and moot type groups. But what I find particularly special about our group is that we are actually doing advocacy work, whether it's nonpartisan advocacy work with our branch, and actually, real concrete impact we're making. There's also other branches, such as like our elections branch, that work on Democratic campaigns across the country, primaries as well. We also have our legislative branch, and they work specifically with certain bills federally, locally in Connecticut. And then we have our city engagement branch that works to kind of bridge gaps between our community in New Haven, Connecticut, and Yale. So I think I think that Yale College Dems and a lot of groups like ours are really special because we're all about impact and tangible, concrete results rather than, your typical debate or typical, mock.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a really special organization to be a part of. And it seems like, I know you're still in your freshman year at Yale, but it seems like you had a lot of great opportunities come your way through the Yale College Democrats. And I know you guys have gotten the chance to put on like tons of different events and programs. Has there been anything in particular that's been like a highlight for you during your first year?
Yeah, I think something that I've always appreciated, and especially with the different group of students in Connecticut, are high school visits. High school visits are really the highlight of, I think, our branch and the work that I like to do, because I think speaking with students, it when they ask you questions about the way things work, or when they just want to know how to do the type of work that I do, or do the type of work that our other VA fellows do in terms of advocacy for certain issues, it makes you care about the issues more. It makes you, I'm learning more about civics locally when I'm speaking with high school students in New Haven, or when I'm speaking with high school students here in San Diego. And I think that's really just been the highlight, is bridging that gap between our university and a lot of these students who sometimes feel like, getting into this type of work isn't for them, or doesn't matter for them, or it doesn't impact them. So high school visits have definitely been the highlight, I think, of my first year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the best part about working in civics, is that as much as you're doing the work for it, you get to learn every single day. There's something new to learn, which, speaking from my own experience, that's my favorite part about it. Well, thank you, Isaiah. We're going to come back to you in a little bit, and we're going to turn over to Idan. So Idan Bosley serves as the Rocky Hill Public Schools representative to the town of Rocky Hill, and was a member of the mayor's transition team. In this role, he helps provide student input on the town's $60 million budget, offers policy suggestions to the mayor, and regularly updates the Board of Education on school activities and student perspectives. He's passionate about strengthening collaboration between local government and students to promote civic engagement. How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So, same set of questions. I know you're the last one, so you've had to hear them many, many times. But what do civics and civic engagement mean to you?
So, I think to start on a definition front, so by the Oxford definition, I searched it up. I was curious, what does civics actually mean? So it means the study of the rights and the duties of citizenship. So what I like so much about that definition is that the duties part is very ambiguous, right? what is each person's duty in a community, and that's different for each person. My civic responsibility might be different than yours, Jason, and that's what's so good about it because we all have our own duties and responsibilities to play. That's what comes together, and that's what allows the community to thrive. So I think that's what's so good about civic, as a definition, is it's only few words, but each of us put our own kind of spin and touch to it, and we build such a strong community. As it regards to civic engagement, I feel it's simply just helping the community in some way, making it and improving it, one step at a time, whether it's a small change, whether it's a whole law implementation. Civic engagement can come in small or big forms, and I think it's just improving, the everyday life of citizens. And on a personal note, I am an immigrant, so I was born in India and I moved to the U.S. when I was 1. So my parents didn't really have, citizenship access. They weren't allowed to vote for around 12 years of their lives. So I've kind of seen how, as Americans, many of us take it for granted, the voting privilege. And my family never had that for at least 12 years, but then we got naturalized in 21. And, I've been committed to ensuring that we can kind of boost voter numbers because it's our fundamental it's a privilege. It's not a right. And I've kind of seen how gracious that privilege is, and I just want to continue spreading that to everyone so we can value it and kind of make our community better every single day.
Yeah, well, thank you, Idan, for sharing that with us. I think it provides a lot of context to the reality of the civic system, of the voting system as it is right now. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's really interesting to compare, look up what civics, the definition is, and compare it. And one thing I'm loving hearing everyone mention is community. All 4 of you have said community, which is always really great to hear. Do you have a certain introduction to civics that stands out to you?
I would say my certain introduction is obviously just being an immigrant, right? I've always seen my last name and being Indian American. Do I identify more with my Indian side? Do I identify more with my American side? How do I balance that? And I think at the end of the day, we're all people are people, and that's what civics allows you to do. You get to contribute in a community, in a society together. I would say notably I've been able to attend many of my board meetings. I try to attend every single one of my Board of Education meetings. So simply being there in that room and seeing how policies are being affected and how I'm being affected by those policy changes are surely a unique experience because for so many years in middle school, I kind of just things used to get added on. There would be new policy changes in school by the principals, and I just wouldn't really know why, those decisions were being made. But now actually attending those Board of Ed meetings, I actually get a full, insight onto why decisions are being made, how they're being made on a much more personal level and local level. So I would say definitely just stepping into my community and connecting with so many local elected officials has truly allowed me to understand what it means to be a civically engaged citizen and continue to grow on that every day.
Yeah, I think it's important to sit in on those meetings, really hear what's being talked about. I think a lot of times people not only can make assumptions, but they can also only hear about things through the news. And sometimes it's really nice to hear things with your own ears as it's happening, as it's unfolding, because you're getting the true, story, no fiction to it or anything.
True. Yeah.
That's great. It's great to hear. Have you found it challenging to find civic engagement opportunities, or not really?
I find it very open. I find, at least for the town of Rock Hill, I can say that our Board of Ed meetings are open to all. They're public meetings. They publish it live as well on video. So I think that accessibility, and I'm pretty sure in most towns in Connecticut have that same access point where you can simply attend Board of Ed meetings and you can make a public comment. And I've made public comments many, many times. I've also testified in front of CC legislatures and the Appropriations Committee and the Education Committee. So that's another way you can kind of find civic engagement opportunities, is simply putting yourself out there. And there are forums. It's just about kind of tapping into them. But yeah, I think as a state, I would say we're doing a great job of opening those opportunities up. I'm still in high school, and I definitely feel I have made some sort of difference and some sort of impact. And I can only say that because I'm so grateful to the opportunities around us. So I think we're very inviting and welcoming as a state. And I think that's what's also propelling us, to become more successful every day.
Yeah, definitely. And made me think of a question that I'm going to ask the group in a little bit. But could you briefly tell me a little bit more about how you got involved with being the Rocky Hill Public School representative, and how you got involved with being a part of the mayor's transition team, and kind of what made you want to?
Yeah. So I think it's a funny story how that kind of all started is our mayor, who is now Alan Smith, when during his campaign season, he was door knocking, and I was working out in the yard, helping my dad with something, and I saw him walk past. And then I was like, I saw him on Instagram. I didn't really know him face to face or personally, but I saw him on Instagram. I was like, oh, he's running for mayor. And maybe I want to talk to him, introduce myself. And I had maybe a 25-minute conversation with Alan Smith at the time. And just being able to converse with him, I realized, wow, kind of what are his policies? What does he want to bring to Rocky Hill? How he wants to do that. And I think in 20 minutes, I was able to get an understanding of local politics more than I ever had. So I really wanted to, help him in whatever way I could. So I've done a bunch of work with my Board of Education, kind of gone up there, spoke many times. So I kind of was well versed in the whole Board of Education scene. So he was like, wow, you'd be a good representative to be on our kind of transition team. Because I think as a town, we're really focusing on trying to interlink all of our different boards, our town councils, and students and policymakers together. And that's why I think our town is thriving, is because I have the opportunity to connect with my Board of Education members and kind of display my concerns to them, and same thing to the mayor. So just being able to create those communication channels has been so effective for me as a student. And that's kind of why I'm in this position, and I've been able to give my advice and implementations on this new budget that we actually passed through the Board of Education yesterday at our Board of Ed meeting. So it feels good to have some sort of say in that and kind of implement it and get to see it be implemented in the coming year. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to applaud you because you're a senior in high school, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And so that means you are just about the age, or you're just getting ready to turn the age where you're actually able to vote. So the fact that you're doing all of this and trying to get the community engaged and promote civic engagement and getting involved with your local boards, it's really impressive. Everything you all are doing is very impressive, and I applaud all of you.
Could I make one more comment?
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention. So I've also worked as an intern for the Department of Education, and one of the things that they were working on is a Civic Seal task force. So the Civic Seal is a seal that will be put on a high schooler's diploma if they have reached a certain amount of civic engagement criteria. We were working on 3 when I last when we were proposing this program, and unfortunately, when I worked on it in 2024, 2025. It failed to pass in the Senate. It passed through the House and failed through the Senate, which was a big learning experience for me because it seemed like a bill that would pass very easily, but it got swept into a bigger bill, and sometimes that becomes very difficult. So I kind of really understood politics and governance in that moment. But luckily, in this legislative cycle of 2026, it did pass House and Senate, and I believe the governor has already signed on it. So I'm very excited to kind of help out with that entire program and see where it goes, because civic engagement and the Civic Seal would be such an honor to have in the state of Connecticut. So
yeah, and I have to think that must be very exciting for you to follow that all the way through. It must feel like quite the feat. That's a highlight in its own. So you kind of jumped the gun a little bit on the question, but do you have another highlight that comes to mind in terms of all the work you've done?
I think maybe I'll just answer it later in another question when we come together as a board. But
okay.
But it was I just wanted to share that.
All right, cool. No, that was great. Thanks. Yeah. All right. So that's the end of our one-on-one individual questions. Thank you all. I now want to get everybody up on the screen and ask some group questions. So everyone can feel free to kind of bounce off one another and kind of comment on what everyone is saying. Hello, hello, hello. All right, awesome. So I guess one big thing that I'm very curious about is, what have you learned about yourself, through doing civic engagement work that you didn't previously know? And anyone can go first.
I could go first. I would say that at times I've learned how civics, and I think governance particularly, can be slow at times, and it can be a frustrating process, but it's so crucial to be perseverant. And like I just mentioned with this Civic Seal, which failed in 2025's legislative session, I testified twice for that. I spent one day in the committee in the public hearing for 6 hours waiting to go and testify. So for it not to pass in that legislative cycle was very was disappointing. But now seeing in 2026 that it has passed, I think there's a certain amount of, I feel really good about it going forward. So civics is sometimes about kind of being perseverant and seeing your goal all the way out, not stopping midway and going to the finish line. And it's really rewarding. I feel very good that, maybe I played a small part in getting this bill passed. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I think that gratitude and just gratification of seeing something out is so powerful, especially in the realm of civics, because it helps the community, not just you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I certainly
Yeah,
agree
I
with
think
that.
I've learned that, and it's something that at the beginning I didn't know when I did this type of work, but towards the end, or even up until now, it's something that I think you constantly have to work on, is connecting with people and like all sorts of people, because oftentimes, the question we get is like, well, why does this matter to me? Or I'm not going to do this. Like nothing's going to change, or, things like that from youth and from adults. And I think what, we know the answer, and the answer is that, hey, politics, civics, government, it does affect you. But you have to almost serve as like a mediator or like a translator when you're explaining that. And it's really, really specific to each individual person. So I've learned to have to connect with students, young people, and adults even, and let them know how government can affect them, because it affects people in really, really different ways. And that's just, something that we constantly get is like, well, why should I vote? And answering that question is different for us why we vote, and it's different for them in terms of why they vote. So that's something that I think I've constantly have to work on, is like connecting with different types of people.
Yeah, definitely. Ryan, I think you were saying something too, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say I completely agree with both of those points. I think looking a little bit more introspective, the biggest thing that I was able to realize was just leadership ability, which is a super generic thing, but I think it was super impactful to my journey so far. I grew up as a super quiet kid and never would have imagined being able to stand up in front of people and tell my story. I recently had the pleasure of serving on a panel alongside the Secretary of the State and former Senate Minority Leader Len Fasano. Last month, I was incredibly nervous, but I could have never imagined myself being capable of doing something like that. So I think just really being able to develop these skills to talk and to stand up in front of people and really tell my story has been super impactful to myself.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a whole nother aspect of the importance of getting involved in civics, is that not only is it helping people recognize the importance of their voice, but they really do build confidence skills. They build public speaking skills. It's a really, really crucial thing in terms of moving through not only your education, but your career and your entire adult life. And now you can say that you served on a panel with Secretary Thomas.
Exactly.
A memory you'll have forever. Antonia, what have you learned about yourself through voter captains?
I definitely agree with what has been said, but I think that I've learned a lot about the importance of talking to people, as many people have said, talking to people and seeing people, meeting people where they're at. And I think that I've learned that I have the ability to change people's mind, which is a really powerful feeling. And it's something that, when you're a kid and, you get told that you talk a lot, I feel like a lot of young people that are very politically active and politically minded, they get told that a lot. I think that, through this work, I've learned that people are listening, and I can, changing people's minds and, also making people feel heard at the same time. That is something that I didn't really know that I didn't fully understand that I had the ability to do before I started doing this work. And I think that's been something really rewarding and something that I will take with me through the rest of my life. So,
yeah, definitely. And yeah, everything you guys have said is just spot on. But I wonder, we talked about highlights, within working with your organizations. I'm sure there have been challenges at some point. Would you mind like sharing some of the challenges you've encountered working within your respective organizations or clubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think starting off in the civic space, I think just getting our message out there is super difficult. We all know that civic engagement is incredibly important, but it isn't always the most glamorous work. We're oftentimes urging people to do basic things like just vote once a year, and it's hard to get that message out to the world. Everyone is on social media, but it's not easy to have those messages, break through or go viral. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges thus far.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think that, similarly, I think that kind of having to explain to people that voting and civic engagement, it's not just a chore. Like having to, when people are civically engaged, they're very passionate about it, but kind of getting people to that point gets to be really challenging, especially when you are working in a community. And I think like working with people, I've worked with people in what I do with the Voter Captains Project on like a range of ages, but once you kind of get to a certain point, people have lives, they're not always looking to, go to school board elections if they don't have kids or et cetera, NRC meetings. And so I think once you kind of have to getting people to care when it doesn't always affect them can be a little bit challenging, but it's also putting in that effort and putting in that extra step. It can go such a long way. So, it is very rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's very obvious based on what all of you have said that the opportunities to get engaged, they do exist. You guys are part of some of those opportunities. What do you think it is that, when it comes to getting people to testify in front of committees or getting people to go to school board meetings and stuff like that? Why don't you think people do? Like, what do you think could be done differently to get higher, like, turnout?
Honestly, I think that all this change happening at a lot of these levels lately, I think are making people more civically engaged, in my opinion, from what I've seen. And I think that it sucks that it has to be such drastic change and it has to impact so many people for people to actually engage. But I think that we are entering into this like digital realm, and it's really important, like on our parts in the orgs that we lead, the groups that we lead, and the people that we discuss with, that I think we tap into that. I think a lot of what we've been seeing online, even the bad with like, potentially false information and all these other things, I think overall, digital engagement is really, really important.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say that many people feel disheartened that I think the most fundamental and simplest thing is voting. And people feel disheartened to vote because they feel, oh, it's only one vote. If I don't vote, that doesn't really affect anything, right? If you think about it in the grand scheme of a presidential election, right? When you have 150 million voters and you don't vote, obviously it won't sway the election one way or the other. But then if one person thinks it and the rest of the community starts thinking, and it's become this collective idea that, oh, my vote doesn't really matter, it becomes a real issue. And I think that's what we've seen, is that we feel that our vote and our voice doesn't matter. And I think that's just simply wrong, because yes, maybe it won't affect much in the presidential election, but if you take it down to the town level, where I think truly it matters the most, where everyday life and decisions are made, when you're voting in a place of only 4,000, people and voters, your vote can make a big difference, even bigger than you think. So I think going out every day and understanding that it is your duty and responsibility as, as an American or as a member of your community to contribute by either voting or by simply giving back in some shape or form. I think understanding that duty is so vital in encouraging people to go through the struggles and understand that, okay, there might be a bigger issue at hand, but But if I do my simple small part and everyone starts doing their simple small part, we can get to, collective growth and collective success. So it's sometimes doing the boring things, sometimes doing things that might not be impactful, but understanding that in the long run, each person, even doing one single change, making that change will help us all in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. All it takes is like that one personal connection to really help forge like that collective, collective feeling and collective community. Yeah, that was great,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that was like a great point. And just this week, there's a city in Florida where the election was decided by 5 votes. Originally it was 1, they recounted, and it was 5. So it just took one side to maybe knock on 10 more doors, or maybe convince 10 more people to register to vote and actually vote. But I think that we're seeing it right in front of us. Yeah, and especially in a presidential election or anything like that. But these local races that matter.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to not realize that there's a lot of places where sometimes one vote is what makes all the difference when it comes to local elections. So I think it's really important that all of you are really touching on the importance of local elections and making sure people are getting involved with their local communities. And in honor of Civic Learning Week, I was really curious, what do you all think that K to 12 students need today in regard to civic education? Because obviously civic education can never start too young. I'm just curious what you all think about that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I think that this has already been touched on, but I wish that when I was learning about civics K through 12, I wish that we talked about more than just voting. I think that, everyone here has talked about how it's not just voting. But I think that, when I was growing up, yeah, we only talked about voting, and that when you are a young person in this space, it, you can't, a lot of times you aren't even able to vote yet. And so when we only talk about civics as voting, it minimizes the civic contributions of people that can't vote. And it also makes people that can vote complacent in the sense that they think that that's all that they can do. It kind of, the buck doesn't stop with voting. And so I think that, if we talk about it as civics as a collective action in which we can all participate and help each other, and we talk about the different things that can be done at the level and the changes that can be made when you just start small in your communities doing any number of things, I think that is so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there needs to be an emphasis put on more than just the voting aspect. So I'm really glad you touched on that, Antonio.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would say the biggest thing for me has been experiential learning. I mean, I got my start in civic life through an internship. So I really think that, making those field trips to the state capitol, inviting municipal leaders to come into the classroom and speak, and supporting those volunteering and those internship opportunities are so key. Not only are these experiences great in themselves, but I think the foundation of civic and professional life is relationships. If we can help students build relationships with mentors early on, we can make a big difference in not only their careers, but also their willingness to engage in civic life.
Yeah, I totally agree. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
Yeah. I would like to take an answer to that. Your question on how we can improve, K through 12 civic education. And I think that the answer is kind of hopefully right in front of us, is the Civic Skills program that hopefully should come out for academic year 26-27, because the way that it should ideally be structured is one that not only merits people who have knowledge of civics, understand the civic principles, how our government functions, but are people who actually practice it as well, right? Who are people who go into meetings, make comments, try and change the community through some form of service and stuff like that. So I really feel that the Civic Seal program will boost civics in Connecticut rapidly and exponentially. I've looked at data at 10 other states that have had this program as part of my internship and research, and I've seen how that has actually helped, civic learning in each of those respective states, because now there's another drive for students to pursue civics. And once they have that little external, push by, getting that diploma seal, they slowly start to realize it wasn't really about the seal at at the end of the day. They really value being a member of the community and being a good citizen, and that's what kind of triumphed getting that seal. But that seal was that initial kind of awe-defining thing that pushed them to, pursue that civics program. But it really civics the gratification of being a civic member is what kept them and let them stay, and I think that's what will happen for Connecticut. So I think that program will be so vital to K through 12 civic education.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing attention to civic seals. I think I'm excited to see what's going to come from it over the next year.
Yep.
I love that, and I think
No,
I think we need that everywhere. I think we need that everywhere. And to expand on that, I think that oftentimes in social science classes, that civic participation, suffrage movements, etc., are oftentimes only displayed in advanced classes. And I think what's really important is that those required social science and history classes in Connecticut and beyond also are part of their unit and part of their curriculum is to teach about participation locally, state, federal, beyond just those advanced placement AP courses or IB courses, but those standard graduation requirement courses as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for sharing that with us. I think it's really important in terms of advancing civic education in the K through 12 range to hear from actual students. So your perspectives are greatly appreciated. So I thank you all. I now want to do some quick Q&A questions. We have 2, and we're running a little bit short on time, so we might have to kind of breeze through these just a little bit. But the first question I wanted to ask you all is, how do you get other students your age to actually care about civics and their community and the government? I always like to phrase it as if you were working at a club fair and you were running a club and you had to get students engaged and they just kept walking, what would you do to kind of reel them back in and get their signature for the club?
So a lot of the work that we do with our voter captains is talking about how to talk about voting, and which sounds a little bit abstract, but the way we kind of frame it is connecting people about not just what's important to them, but your values. So when you are, and I think what we do really does get to the heart of civics, because our voter captains are talking to people in their communities about voting and convincing them more or less to vote, and they're not door knocking. So when you are able to connect with someone about their values at large, as well as their personal experiences and how that relates to what's happening with the school board election or your RTM, etc., it really does make a difference. And so I think that can definitely be applied to a club fair, talking to your peers. When I'm talking to people my age about voting, I still try to use that sort of, what do they care about, and what does that mean on a larger scale, principle wise.
Yeah, almost starting small and getting turning it into a large scale. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, similarly to what Antonia said, tapping into what students care about. Even if they're little things. When I visit voter registrations, and whichever school got the most, we hosted we gave history classes or teachers we give them funds from the district, and they were able to host parties. That's something that we did, or at a registration event in New Haven in high school in New Haven. It was Halloween time, so we created an entire Halloween type presentation, and we centered it around Snapchat and Instagram. We said, "Don't ghost the vote," and we did a play on words on ghost, little things like that. Even if they're little, what do students care about at school or in any situation from high school to college?
Yeah, it is. It's very, very important to tap into what students care about. I've said it multiple times, but it all comes back down to personal connection. You got to find that one thing that'll help people kind of be a part of the conversation and get engaged. So I'm very glad you're all touching on that. Did anybody else have anything they want to say before we move on?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing to simply that could be done is I think if you sit down with one person and ask them, what are the issues in your life as it stands right now? And if they start listing things such as, oh, our education system isn't too good. I'm not getting proper education. Oh, I'm not getting enough safety. I feel unsafe when I'm walking around the streets of our town. Then I want that person to introspect and be like, how can they do civics outreach to actually fix those issues? For education, going to those board of ed meetings, they could actually, talk to legislatures and try and fix that. Or for safety, they could also go to, law enforcement and see what way they can have civic enforcement. They can, advocate for civics in that regard too. So I think identifying what the problem is first, what problem they have in life, and understanding how civics ties into it is a great way just to get involved.
Yeah, totally. I think it's great to hear how knowledgeable you all are when it comes to getting access to these resources. And it seems like for people in your communities, you guys would be great kind of contacts, great people to get engaged with and have conversations and learn more about this stuff. Another great Q&A question that we got was, did you ever doubt yourself or feel like you weren't qualified enough to lead? And how did you push past that?
I can definitely attest to that. When I became a commissioner in my town at 18, definitely it was super intimidating being in these meetings with other commissioners that are 2 to 3 times my age. So really just putting my head down, taking a look at the regulations, and really understanding what I was doing, what I wanted to do with my role on the commission. Really being able to understand exactly what I want to do and really dive into that work kind of helped me get past that intimidation.
Yeah, and it's really important for other students to see individuals like yourself kind of paving the way and kind of setting by example. Anyone else?
I think it's a very continuous process of being a leader, and that there'll be moments where you're gonna do bad, you're not gonna succeed, and I think it's so crucial to learn from those mistakes, grow from them, and then make more mistakes and continue this process of growth. But never doubt yourself. Always be true to your values, your character, and just your testament. Because at the end of the day, we all make mistakes. We all are not going to be the best on day one, and I think that's what's so good about life and leadership is you learn along the way, along the journey. And I think as a leader, I've grown so much in civics because I've made mistakes, I've learned from them, and I've continued to grow. And I'm going to continue to make mistakes. But the great thing about that is it's not really a mistake; it's just a moment of growth. And I'll continue to do that for the rest of my life. So I think always be true to yourself, always have confidence. I know that the next mistake is coming, but not to fear away from it. Take risks and just do the best you can, and I think it'll pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, and I always like to say, it's not failing; it's a learning curve. I've had many learning curves. All right, does anybody else have anything before we move on to our final question of the night? All right, great. So the Connecticut Democracy Center has been participating in what's considered wish walls for America's 250th birthday. So across within the old State House, we have these big poster boards that one can go up and take a sticky note and write their civic wish for America for its birthday. It could be something that you'd like to see happen within the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 100 years, 250 years. But I was curious, as this is kind of our culminating event for Civic Learning Week, what is all of your civic wishes for America's 250th?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry. No, my civic wish, and I think that's in the short term and in the long term, is that people don't lose hope when they're engaging and something doesn't go right, or a bill isn't passed, or the candidate they didn't want to win wins, or the street that they want fixed is still not fixed. I think that losing hope is really, really dangerous because that opens the door to negligence. And I think, don't lose hope. continue to participate even when you have a bad election or even when something doesn't go well. I think that in throughout Connecticut and throughout the country, that we just can't lose hope no matter what you're passionate about. You and others, don't lose hope, don't lose faith about the things that you care about and what you can do to change it.
Great. Antonia?
I think that with everything that's happening at the current political moment that we're in, I think that, one of the things that's come out of that is we've really turned to our community and in Connecticut, in our towns, on our campuses, et cetera. So my civic wish is that we, start to and continue to uplift our neighbors. I think that being a good neighbor is so important, and really looking at what the people around you need, what your friends need, et cetera. I think that is really what I would like to focus my civic work on. And I think that that's kind of at the basis of how I try to, conduct my politics. So that's what I wish for the future.
Yeah. And before we move on to Ryan and Idan, I just want to say that for those that are watching, you may have already seen it, but we've shared a digital wish wall in the chat. And I would love for everyone to share their wishes in terms of who's watching. Just type your wish, your name, and the town you're from. And that would be great just for us to see. Ryan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. I would say my wish is for the return of civility. I hope for a day to come where politics and civics can once again be a normal day-to-day kitchen table conversation. It shouldn't need to be something that we have to avoid. I think we all have some family members at Thanksgiving that are like that, but I think hopefully one day we can have a time where we can discuss politics, maybe without arguing, without yelling, or even sometimes ruining relationships. I think it starts really with conversations like this. So I'm really thankful for the invitation to speak and for your efforts to include youth in these spaces.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all. Thank you all. Seriously, thank you all for agreeing to do this. Idan?
I think my answer is pretty simple. Is I want there to be a universal sentiment that people are people. I think that we've kind of lost that in today's day and age, just like Ryan had mentioned, is that politics is so polarized. It's either you're a member of this party, I don't want to talk to you. You're a member of this party, I don't want to talk to you. But at the end of the day, we're all just people. And I think that's what we need to unify under, is that common thread that we are Americans. We are, people from Connecticut, and we are, here for each other, regardless of what party is or the party lines, right? And I think once we get past that, understand that there are differences, and having those differences is so crucial to progress, because we can identify what we think is collectively good, and truly use that to our advantage. So use our differences to propel us and to succeed from that angle. So I think understanding that a person is person, regardless of their political affiliation, the party, I think we'll go such a long way, because then we'll move as a unified body, as America, rather than being this party versus this party. So my wish is a universal understanding that people are people.
Yeah, I know no one's asking for it, but you all have very much touched on my own wish in terms of just having a mutual understanding for one another. So this is all very great to hear. Well, thank you, Antonia. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Isaiah.
What is your wish?
My wish?
Yeah.
I mean, my big wish is I would love to see more LGBTQ plus leaders in office. That's a big one. But I think kind of my second kind of behind that wish would just be seeing people for people. I mean, that's always really important to me, and kind of getting rid of labels. I'm not a labels guy. I cannot stand them. So yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. We really, 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 really appreciate you doing this. I know I feel really inspired listening to you guys, and I'm sure our audience does as well. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in. And this is also going to be recorded and uploaded to the Connecticut Democracy Center YouTube. So you're more than welcome to rewatch this at any time. That goes for the audience and the panelists if you just want to rewatch your answers back. But I just wanted to remind everyone to make sure they visit ctdemocracycenter.org for more Civic Learning Week in Connecticut resources, and to learn more about the Connecticut Democracy Center programs. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a nice night and you stay warm. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.